She arrived late to the greatest naval war in history, yet destiny reserved for her one of its most iconic moments. She was a steel leviathan, the culmination of battleship design, bristling with guns that could hurl shells the weight of a small car over the horizon. She fought in the fires of the Pacific, endured the cold clashes of Korea, and unleashed modern missiles in the deserts of the Middle East. She is the USS Missouri, BB-63, affectionately known as Mighty Mo, the last battleship commissioned by the United States Navy, and a vessel whose decks bore witness to the end of World War II. The story of the Missouri begins not on the waves, but in the bustling shipyards of Brooklyn, New York. Laid down on January 6, 1941, even before the United States formally entered World War II, she was the third of the planned Iowa-class battleships. These weren't just battleships, they were fast battleships, designed to remedy the speed limitations of previous American designs like the South Dakota class. The goal was audacious: create a warship that packed the wallop and protection of a traditional battle wagon, but possessed the speed to escort the Navy's increasingly vital aircraft carriers. This meant balancing immense firepower and thick armor plating with a propulsion system capable of pushing nearly 60,000 tons of steel through the water at speeds exceeding 30 knots, or about 35 miles per hour. For comparison, earlier American battleships topped out around 21 knots, making them too slow to keep pace with the fast carrier task forces that were revolutionizing naval warfare. The Iowa class, however, could sprint alongside the Essex and Midway-class carriers, providing a formidable anti-aircraft screen and overwhelming surface firepower if needed. Building such a vessel was a monumental undertaking. It took over 3 years, involving thousands of workers and consuming, quite remarkably, 175 tons of blueprint paper just for the design phase. Finally, on January 29, 1944, hull number BB-63 slid into the waters of the East River. The ship was christened USS Missouri by Mary Margaret Truman, daughter of the then senator from Missouri, Harry S. Truman, who would soon become president and make the decision to use the atomic bombs that hastened the war's end. Although her sister ship, USS Wisconsin, BB-64, had a higher hull number, Missouri was actually completed and commissioned later, on June 11, 1944, under the command of Captain William M. Callaghan. This distinction made her the last battleship ever to be commissioned into the U.S. Navy. Plans for 2 more Iowa-class ships and the even larger Montana-class were ultimately canceled as wartime priorities shifted decisively towards aircraft carriers. Let's talk about size and power, because the Missouri was truly immense. She stretched 887 feet and 3 inches in length overall. That's nearly 3 American football fields laid end to end. Her beam, or width, was 108 feet and 2 inches, deliberately kept just narrow enough to squeeze through the locks of the Panama Canal. Fully loaded, she displaced around 58,000 tons. Standing on her keel, the height to the top of her mast was over 200 feet. Powering this behemoth were 8 massive Babcock and Wilcox boilers, generating high-pressure steam for 4 powerful General Electric geared steam turbines. Together, these turbines produced a staggering 212,000 shaft horsepower, driving 4 enormous propellers, 2 4-bladed outboard and 2 5-bladed inboard, allowing her to achieve those impressive speeds over 30 knots. Her fuel tanks could hold nearly 2.5 million gallons of fuel oil, giving her a cruising range of about 15,000 nautical miles at a steady 15 knots. And then there was the armament, the teeth of the Mighty Mo. Her defining feature was the main battery, 9 colossal 16-inch 50 caliber Mark 7 naval guns, mounted in 3 heavily armored triple turrets, 2 forward and 1 aft. Each gun barrel alone was 68 feet long and weighed about 134 tons. These guns could fire 2 types of shells, an armor-piercing round weighing 2,700 pounds, designed to penetrate the thick protection of enemy warships, and a high-capacity, high-explosive round weighing 1,900 pounds, devastating against land targets and unarmored vessels. Fired with a standard charge of 6 110-pound bags of powder, these shells could travel an astonishing 23 miles, that's beyond the horizon, in about 90 seconds, landing with pinpoint accuracy thanks to sophisticated fire control systems. The rate of fire was 2 rounds per minute per gun. Imagine the earth-shattering roar and concussion of a full 9-gun broadside. Her secondary battery was almost as impressive. 25-inch, 38-caliber dual-purpose guns housed in 10 twin turrets, 5 mounted along each side of the superstructure. These versatile guns could engage both surface targets and aircraft out to a range of about 9 miles, firing 55-pound shells at a rate of 15 rounds per minute per gun. For close-in air defense during World War II, she bristled with anti-aircraft weaponry. 80 40mm Bofors guns in quadruple mounts and 49 20mm Oerlikon cannons in single mounts. This dense curtain of flak was essential protection against enemy aircraft, particularly the terrifying kamikaze attacks encountered later in the war. Protection was paramount for a battleship. The Missouri featured an incredibly thick armor belt along her waterline, measuring 13.5 inches at its maximum, tapering vertically to shield her vital machinery spaces. The main gun turrets were fortresses in themselves, with faces 17 inches thick, sides over 9 inches thick, and tops over 7 inches thick. The conning tower, from where the ship was commanded in battle, boasted 17.3 inches of solid steel armor. Multiple layers of armored decking protected against plunging shells and bombs. She was designed to take a beating and keep fighting. After her commissioning in June 1944, Missouri spent several months working up, training her crew, and conducting sea trials. She transited the Panama Canal in November and steamed across the Pacific, arriving at the forward base of Ulithi Atoll in January 1945. The war in the Pacific was raging, and the U.S. was pushing ever closer to the Japanese home islands. Missouri was immediately thrown into the fray, joining Task Force 58, the Navy's main carrier strike force. Her first major combat operation was supporting the brutal invasion of Iwo Jima in February 1945. Her 16-inch guns provided vital shore bombardment, pounding Japanese defenses ahead of the Marine landings. Following Iwo Jima, she participated in the even larger and bloodier Okinawa campaign, starting in late March. Again, her heavy guns supported the troops ashore, while her numerous anti-aircraft guns helped defend the fleet from relentless Japanese air attacks, including kamikazes. It was during the Okinawa campaign, on April 11, 1945, that the Missouri had her own close encounter with a kamikaze. A Japanese Mitsubishi A6M0 fighter, intent on a suicide dive, skimmed low over the water and, despite being hit by anti-aircraft fire, crashed into the battleship's starboard side, just below the main deck level. The impact started a fire fueled by gasoline from the plane's wreckage. However, Missouri's damage control teams responded swiftly, extinguishing the flames before they could cause serious harm. While the ship suffered superficial damage, a dent in the hull plating and scorch marks, her operational capability was unaffected. In a gesture often noted for its humanity amidst the brutality of war, Captain Callaghan ordered that the remains of the Japanese pilot found on deck be given a respectful burial at sea the following day. A dent from this impact remains visible on the ship's hull to this day, a stark reminder of the ferocity of the Pacific War. In May 1945, Missouri became the flagship of Admiral William F. Bull Halsey, Jr., commander of the U.S. Third Fleet. From her flag bridge, Halsey directed the final naval operations against Japan, including carrier strikes against airfields and industrial targets on the Japanese home islands of Kyushu and Honshu, and continued bombardment missions by the battleships and cruisers of the fleet. Missouri herself participated in shelling industrial targets, including the Nihon Steel Company and the Wanishi Iron Works at Muroran on Hokkaido in July 1945. The relentless pressure from sea and air, culminating in the devastating atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in early August, finally forced Japan's leadership to accept the terms of the Potsdam Declaration. On August 15, 1945, President Harry S. Truman announced Japan's acceptance of unconditional surrender. The question then became where the formal surrender ceremony should take place. While other locations were considered, President Truman specifically chose the battleship named after his home state, the USS Missouri. It was a fitting choice, symbolizing the might of the United States Navy that had played such a crucial role in achieving victory in the Pacific. On September 2, 1945, the USS Missouri lay anchored in Tokyo Bay, surrounded by an armada of Allied warships. The weather was overcast, but the significance of the occasion was immense. On her O1 level veranda deck, history was about to be made. Preparations were meticulous. A simple table covered with a green felt cloth was set up. Notably, displayed prominently on the bulkhead overlooking the ceremony was the 31-star American flag that Commodore Matthew Perry had flown when his fleet sailed into Tokyo Bay nearly a century earlier, in 1853, compelling Japan to open its doors to the West. Its presence was a powerful symbol of the historical arc being completed. At precisely 9:02 a.m., General of the Army Douglas MacArthur, Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers, stepped to the microphones to begin the proceedings. His opening remarks were brief but resonant, calling not for vengeance but for justice, tolerance, and the rebuilding of a world founded on freedom and understanding. Following MacArthur, the Japanese delegation approached the table. Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu, representing the Emperor and the Japanese government, signed the Instrument of Surrender first at 9:04 a.m. He was followed by General Yoshijiro Umezu, Chief of the Imperial Japanese Army General Staff, signing on behalf of the Japanese Military Command. Then it was the Allies' turn. General MacArthur signed first as Supreme Commander, using 6 different pens. In a poignant gesture, he gave 2 of these pens to Lieutenant General Jonathan Wainwright, who had endured years of captivity after surrendering U.S. forces in the Philippines, and Lieutenant General Arthur Percival, the British commander who had surrendered Singapore. These men, symbols of the Allied suffering during the war, stood directly behind MacArthur as he signed. Following MacArthur, representatives from the other major Allied powers signed the document in turn. Fleet Admiral Chester W. Nimitz for the United States, General Xu Yongchang for the Republic of China, Admiral Sir Bruce Fraser for the United Kingdom, Lieutenant General Kuzma Derivienko for the Soviet Union, General Sir Thomas Blamey for Australia, Colonel 1 Lawrence Moore Cosgrave for Canada, General Philippe Leclerc II for France, Lieutenant Admiral Conrad Helfrich for the Netherlands, and Air Vice Marshal Leonard Easett for New Zealand. The entire ceremony lasted just 23 minutes. At 9:23 a.m., General MacArthur declared, "These proceedings are closed." As if on cue, the clouds parted and the sun broke through. Moments later, a massive formation of hundreds of American B-29 superfortresses and Navy carrier planes roared overhead in a pre-planned flypast. A final, thundering demonstration of the Allied air power that had helped bring Japan to its knees. World War II, the most destructive conflict in human history, was officially over, and it had ended on the decks of the USS Missouri. A bronze plaque now marks the exact spot on the deck where the surrender document was signed, a permanent memorial to this pivotal moment. With the war concluded, Missouri returned to the United States, participating in a triumphant Navy Day review in New York Harbor in October 1945, with President Truman himself aboard. In March 1946, she undertook a significant diplomatic mission, carrying the body of the Turkish ambassador to the United States, who had died in Washington, back to Istanbul. This voyage into the Mediterranean was also a subtle but clear signal of American commitment to the region amidst rising Cold War tensions with the Soviet Union. For the remainder of the 1940s, she engaged primarily in training exercises and midshipman cruises, mostly operating in the Atlantic. Her generally peaceful post-war service was dramatically interrupted on January 17, 1950. While operating in Chesapeake Bay, near Hampton Roads, Virginia, during high tide, the Missouri ran hard aground on a shoal known as Thimble Shoal. It was a major embarrassment for the Navy. The grounding was attributed to a series of navigational errors. Extricating the massive battleship proved to be a Herculean task, requiring extensive dredging, the removal of ammunition and fuel to lighten the ship, and the coordinated power of multiple tugboats and specialized salvage vessels. After several weeks of intensive effort, she was finally refloated on February 1, 1950. Fortunately, damage was relatively minor, and after repairs, she returned to service. Fate soon called Missouri back to combat. In June 1950, North Korea invaded South Korea, plunging the peninsula into war. At the time, Missouri was the only U.S. battleship on active duty. She was quickly dispatched to the Western Pacific, arriving in Korean waters in September 1950. Once again, her powerful 16-inch guns proved invaluable. She became the first American battleship to reach the Korean theater and immediately commenced shore bombardment operations in support of UN forces. Her shells blasted enemy troop concentrations, supply lines, bridges, and coastal defense positions along the Korean coast. She supported the crucial Incheon landings, provided fire cover during the desperate fighting withdrawal from the Chosun Reservoir, and screened aircraft carriers operating offshore. She served as flagship for several admirals, including Rear Admiral Allen E. Smith and Vice Admiral Harold M. Martin. Missouri completed 2 combat tours during the Korean War, the first from September 1950 to March 1951, and the second from September 1952 to March 1953. By the end of her Korean service, her main battery firepower had become legendary, capable of delivering devastating blows far inland with remarkable accuracy. Following the Korean War armistice in 1953, Missouri conducted several more training cruises. However, the era of the battleship seemed to be drawing to a close once again. With high operating costs and the rise of carrier aviation and guided missiles, maintaining these behemoths seemed less justifiable. On February 26, 1955, USS Missouri was decommissioned for the first time and placed in the Pacific Reserve Fleet at Bremerton, Washington. For nearly 3 decades, she rested in mothballs, preserved but inactive. Yet, even in slumber, she remained a popular tourist attraction, a tangible link to America's naval heritage. But the story of the Iowa-class battleships wasn't quite over. In the 1980s, under President Ronald Reagan's 600-ship Navy initiative, a decision was made to reactivate all 4 Iowa-class battleships: Iowa, New Jersey, Missouri, and Wisconsin. The rationale was that their heavy armor and massive guns still provided a unique capability, particularly for shore bombardment and surface action, that could be augmented with modern missile technology. Missouri began her modernization process in 1984 at the Long Beach Naval Shipyard. The reactivation involved far more than just dusting off the old systems. While her core structure, armor, and main gun battery remained largely unchanged, she received significant technological upgrades. Her World War II-era 40mm and 20mm anti-aircraft guns were removed. In their place, she received 4 Phalanx Close-In Weapon Systems, or CIWs, rapid-firing Gatling-style 20mm cannons designed as a last line of defense against incoming anti-ship missiles and aircraft. More significantly, she was equipped with powerful new offensive missile systems. Armored box launchers were installed on her decks, capable of firing 32 BGM-109 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles, giving her the ability to strike targets hundreds of miles inland with incredible precision. She also received launchers for 16 RGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missiles, providing a potent threat against enemy surface vessels far beyond the range of her guns. Her radar, electronic warfare, and communications suites were also thoroughly updated to modern standards. Her crew complement was reduced to about 65 officers and 1,450 enlisted personnel, significantly fewer than her World War II complement, thanks to automation and the removal of the numerous older AA guns. On May 10, 1986, USS Missouri was formally recommissioned into the U.S. Navy fleet, ready for a new era of service. Her first major deployment after reactivation was a symbolic circumnavigation of the globe, echoing the voyage of the Great White Fleet nearly 80 years earlier, which had included the previous USS Missouri, BB-11. This world cruise included participation in the 75th anniversary celebrations of the Royal Australian Navy and a transit of the Suez Canal. In 1987, she deployed to the Persian Gulf as part of Operation Earnest Will, escorting reflagged Kuwaiti oil tankers during the Iran-Iraq War, demonstrating American resolve in the volatile region. Her final call to combat came in 1991. Following Iraq's invasion of Kuwait in August 1990, Missouri deployed to the Persian Gulf as part of the massive coalition force assembled for Operation Desert Shield, which became Operation Desert Storm in January 1991. Alongside her sister ship, USS Wisconsin, Missouri provided crucial naval gunfire support for ground forces and conducted offensive strikes against Iraqi targets. On the night of January 17, 1991, the opening hours of the air war, Missouri launched Tomahawk cruise missiles against strategic targets deep inside Iraq. Later in the conflict, her 16-inch guns were brought into action once more. She fired hundreds of rounds, including over 100 shells in a single 24-hour period, against Iraqi positions along the Kuwaiti coast, suppressing defenses, destroying artillery batteries, and supporting marine breaching operations near Khafji. The psychological impact of the massive battleship shells raining down was reportedly significant. During Desert Storm, Missouri faced threats from Iraqi shore defenses. On one occasion, Iraqi forces launched 2 Silkworm anti-ship missiles towards the battleship group. One missile missed, while the other was successfully intercepted and destroyed by a Sea Dart missile fired from the British destroyer HMS Gloucester, which was escorting the Missouri. The battleship also employed chaff countermeasures. Her participation in the Gulf War demonstrated that even in the age of missiles and stealth, the heavily armed and armored battleship still had a relevant combat role. However, with the collapse of the Soviet Union and subsequent defense budget cuts, the high operating costs of the battleships once again made them targets for decommissioning. The Navy decided that their capabilities, while unique, could be largely replicated by other platforms like carrier air wings and missile-equipped cruisers and destroyers. On March 31, 1992, at Long Beach, California, USS Missouri was decommissioned for the second and final time, bringing her active naval service career to a close after spanning nearly half a century and 3 major conflicts. Missouri remained in the reserve fleet for a few more years, but her historical significance, particularly as the site of the World War II surrender, made her a prime candidate for preservation as a museum ship. After considerable effort by various groups and individuals, she was donated by the Navy in May 1998 to the USS Missouri Memorial Association, a nonprofit organization based in Hawaii. She was towed from Bremerton, Washington, across the Pacific one last time, arriving in Pearl Harbor in June 1998. Her final resting place is deeply symbolic. She is now moored bow to bow along Ford Island's Battleship Row, facing the wreck of the USS Arizona. The Arizona, sunk during the Japanese attack on December 7, 1941, represents the beginning of America's involvement in World War II. The Missouri, upon whose decks the war officially ended, represents its conclusion. Together, they form a poignant, bookend narrative of the Pacific War, standing as memorials to sacrifice, conflict, and eventual peace. The Battleship Missouri Memorial opened to the public in January 1999 and quickly became one of Hawaii's most popular attractions, welcoming millions of visitors from around the world. Walking her teak decks, exploring her cavernous interior, and standing on the surrender deck allows visitors to connect directly with some of the most pivotal moments of the 20th century. From the Brooklyn Navy Yard to Tokyo Bay, from the shores of Korea to the Persian Gulf, and finally to her honored berth in Pearl Harbor, the USS Missouri witnessed and shaped history. She was the last of her kind, a symbol of American industrial might and naval power, designed for a war that was already changing when she was conceived, yet proving adaptable enough to serve across vastly different technological eras. She earned 11 battle stars for her service, 3 in World War II, 5 in Korea, and 3 in the Gulf War. More than just a collection of steel, guns, and engines, she embodies the stories of the thousands of sailors who served aboard her, the conflicts she endured, and the peace she helped secure. Mighty Mo rests today not just as a museum, but as a powerful reminder of the past and a silent guardian overlooking the waters where America's journey through World War II began. Her legacy is more than just metal and memories. It's a testament to endurance. Think about it. A ship designed with slide rules and vacuum tubes was upgraded to fire computer-guided cruise missiles. She physically connects the era of Pearl Harbor to the dawn of the digital age in warfare. Standing on her decks today, you can almost feel the echoes of history, the solemnity of the surrender, the roar of the guns off Korea, the tension in the Gulf. Mighty Mo truly earned her name. What part of the Missouri's long career do you find most fascinating? Was it her role in ending World War II, her unexpected reactivation in the 80s, or something else entirely? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you enjoy exploring these incredible chapters of military history and want to journey aboard more legendary vessels like the Mighty Mo, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit that button so you don't miss our next deep dive into the machines and moments that shaped our world. Thanks for watching.